Okay, we're picking up, excuse me, we're picking up with Act 3, I believe, which is on 1278 in the 11th edition and 1643 in the 10th edition. So, King and Queen, Polonius, Ophelia, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and a variety of others come in. And the King and Queen are asking Rosencrantz and Guildenstern questions regarding how their, what do you want to call their conversation with Hamlet? How do you want to describe that? How their interview went, how their spying session went. So the king says, and can you, by no drift of conference, you've got a gloss, device of conversation, give from him why he puts on this confusion. Now, that kind of makes it sound like the king thinks it's an act, okay? Grading so harshly all his days of quiet with turbulent and dangerous lunacy. Okay? Puts on, however, may also just mean why he's acting confused. Not pretending acting, but just his everyday demeanor. Okay? Rosencrantz. He does confess he feels himself distracted. We've talked about the word distracted, meaning drawn away from, pulled away from its focus. But with a crafty madness, keeps aloof when we would bring him on to some confession of his true state. So he suggests, we tried to get at the root of it, but Hamlet craftily kind of, pushed us aside, kept from revealing himself. Queen. Hold on a second. Did he receive you well? Most like a gentleman, but with much forcing of his disposition. Okay, notice your gloss. Against his will. That is, Guildenstern seems to imply that Hamlet pushed back when they came in. Okay? What, if you remember that scene, what did Hamlet say to them after asking, were you not sent for? He says, I know you were sent for, and I know why you're here, right? Later on in this act, Hamlet's going to push back almost violently, okay? I mean, where he almost comes to blows with them. So, Queen asks, line either 14 or 15, did you essay him to any pastime? That is, did you try to get him to do something he used to do, something that he used to enjoy doing? No idea what it could be, game, drinking, whatever. Rosencrantz. Madam, it so fell out, certain players we overwrought on the way. Of these we told him, and there did seem in him a kind of joy. In other words, we found something he took pleasure in. Implying Hamlet's not, what's the phrase I want? Hamlet's not totally gone. Hamlet's not so far down in depression that he can't find something to take pleasure or joy in. Often you will find someone who is suicidal will say, there's nothing in the world that brings me any pleasure, any happiness, any joy. Kind of what Hamlet sounds like in his opening soliloquy, oh, that this too sullied flesh would thaw, melt, resolve itself into a dew, etc., where he talks about the uses of the world are stale and flat and such, right? So this implies he's not totally gone, all right? So Polonius says, yes, that's true. He wanted your majesties to hear and see the matter, that is, to watch the play. So Polonius is implying Hamlet has talked to him after talking to the players. When he said, if I could write you 12, 16 lines, you could, and the chief player said yes. So the king says, with all my heart, if, I'm throwing in the if, he says, and it doth much content me to hear him so inclined. King's suggesting, if this will bring Hamlet out of his funk, by all means, okay? So, he says, good gentlemen, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, give him a further edge, and you've got a little gloss there. Incitement. Yeah, it could mean that. I think almost a better way of putting it is nudge him a little more. Just kind of keep gently pressing, all right? And drive his purpose into these delights. The actors, the play, the drama that's going to go on, okay? So they leave. And then the king tells Gertrude, we want you to leave too. Why? We've sent for Hamlet, and so they're going to try Polonius's stratagem. Remember he said, Act 2, Scene 2, page 1268, lines 160 and following. He said, Hamlet sometimes walks for 4 hours at a time in the lobby. Yes, we do. He says, at such a time, I'll loose my daughter on him, and you and I, king, be standing behind the arras. Okay? Curtain, curtain. So they're going to be standing behind one of these. Ophelia is going to be out here. Hamlet's going to walk in this direction. It can obviously be reversed. It doesn't matter which order you put those in. Okay? So, the king goes on. 29. We have closely sent for Hamlet hither, that he, that is so that he, as torn by an accident, may here affront Ophelia. That means confront Ophelia. Her father and myself, lawful espials, that is, lawfully spying on them. Why are they lawful espials? This is the king speaking.
They were hired by him, right?
Who's the they that you're referring to?
The spies.
Who's going to be doing the spying? Claudius and Polonius. So when he says lawful espials, he's the king. He makes the law. Whatever I do is lawful, in other words. Okay? Her father and myself, lawful espials, will so bestow ourselves that seeing unseen, now the unseen means unseen by those on the stage and therefore by those of us out in the audience, but again, he says, seeing, we will be able to witness this encounter. The only way, kind of metaphysically, that can occur is if they are somewhere within that area. So, somewhere on the stage, even if hidden by the arras. He says, we will so bestow ourselves that seeing unseen, we may of their encounter frankly judge, and gather by him as he has behaved, that is, determined by Hamlet's actions and behaviors, if it be the affliction of his love or no, that thus he suffers for. Okay? So he's told us and Gertrude exactly what's going to happen. Queen, I shall obey you. And for your part, Ophelia, I do wish that your good beauties be the happy cause of Hamlet's wildness. So notice what her comment to Ophelia tells us without overtly telling this to us. What does Ophelia know is going to happen?
Hamlet's gonna get spun.
And what is her role in that?
She's the pawn.
She's the pawn. She's the bait. So she is involved. She is a willing participant in this spying on of Hamlet. Okay? Gotta let that sink in. But the queen also says, overtly, what she really wants to get across to Ophelia is what? I really hope it's your beauty. I really hope it's you that has caused Hamlet's madness. Okay? So shall I hope your virtues will bring him to his wonted way again, to both your honors. How can her virtues, it's not a gloss there, her beauties, the power of her beauty, her virginity is also included in there. How can that bring him to his wanted way, that is, back to his senses, and do that to both their honors? Here's, I think, where you have to interpret again. It's not just the literal meaning. There's a bit of a subtext. Gertrude is implying what can happen between Hamlet and Ophelia.
I can fall in love.
Keep going. And
It'll make him not be crazy anymore.
keep going.
They'll get married.
Bingo. Even though Polonius and Laertes said, Hamlet is out of your reach. Here's the queen, like Queen Elizabeth, telling Charles, you can marry this one. Without coming out verbally and using those exact words. She's kind of implying, Ophelia, if you can draw him back into himself the way he should be, I'll bless this marriage. Ophelia, madam, I wish it may. That is, I wish my virtues can make Hamlet himself again, and that will redound to both our honors. Okay? So, Polonius says, Ophelia, walk you here. And it's like he takes you out to a spot. So he's becoming the director, almost, I've never thought of the scene like this before, of another play within the play. He's going to direct this action. He says, read on this book, and he gives it to her. Why? That such a show of such an exercise may color your loneliness. Okay? We are oft to blame in this, 'tis too much proved, that with devotion's visage and pious action, we do sugar o'er the devil himself. Okay. Devotion's visage, what's devotion?
A promise.
Louder?
A promise.
Kind of, to whom? Devotion's religious. You don't show, in one sense you do. You don't show devotion to your spouse. I mean, you can. But devotion is directed to God or the divine. All right? So, with devotion's visage, the look on your face in worship, so to speak, all right? And pious action, that is, good works. So, one involves something internal, because that's what controls the external appearance of the face. All right? So faith and good works, two very important theological ideas in the 16th and 17th centuries. Why? Because that's the division right there between the Protestant faith, Protestant Christian church, and the Catholic Christian church. It's the whole cause of what's called the Protestant Reformation, which we'll talk about in a few moments, probably. Might be Friday. So, he says, these do what? With devotion's visage and pious action, what's meant by sugar over? The devil himself.
Like, I guess why?
Lie. You've heard the phrase sugarcoating something? What do you do when you sugarcoat something?
Make it a little softer. Don't make it sound as harsh.
You take something really bad, like really bad news, and you put a positive spin on it. I mean, the phrase literally comes from, you take something bad tasting and you put it in a sweet cover to take it. You know, the Mary Poppins song, a little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down. Try feeding a cat a pill. Got an 18-pound orange cat, it's massive, and he's got a bad heart, probably because he's 18 pounds. And the cat won't take the pill. You shove it down its throat, you get bit, and the damn thing spits it out every time. My wife finally found out, you take a cat treat and rub it on the pill, it doesn't spit it out as easily, it still tries. That's what he's getting at. So, devotions, visage, and good works do what? We use those to sugarcoat the devil himself. Not literally the devil, but to use St. Paul's term, the old Adam, the fallen stuff inside, bad inner humanity, okay? The king hears that, and the king gives an aside. Bear in mind, Gertrude's already left. Polonius and Ophelia do not hear what the king says. Oh, 'tis true, true. It is too true. How smart a lash that speech doth give my conscience. Why? Because the words that Polonius just used describe Claudius to a T. And it kind of breaks through for a moment. And Claudius is like, oh man, that stings. Because he's just described Claudius. So, he goes on. The harlot's cheek, beautied with plastering art, is not more ugly to the thing that helps it than is my deed to my most painted word. Oh, heavy burden. Notice, the harlot's cheek, beautied with plastering art. The harlot's cheek can be painted over to cover up the foulness, so to speak. Okay? And he says, that's not more ugly to the thing that helps it than my deed. What's his deed? Notice, it's not a good work. Killing of his brother echoes the primal sin, Cain killing Abel, okay, and sleeping with the dead brother's wife. Polonius, I hear him coming. Let's withdraw, my lord. Now, your stage direction says exit, King and Polonius, because they need to remove themselves from here. But what have we already been told twice they're going to do? They're going to stand behind an arras. Right? So Hamlet comes out and delivers what is always called the greatest soliloquy in the English language. But it's not, again, a soliloquy. Because even if you say for the moment, the king and Polonius have left the stage, Ophelia is still out there. Everybody in the audience sees her. It's not like she's hiding behind one of the columns that's holding up the roof. So, Hamlet comes out. The question is, does Hamlet do anything other than speak when he comes out? Does Hamlet walk out looking at the ground and just start to be or not to be? That is the question. Or does he walk out with his head up and see Ophelia and then start the speech? To be or not to be? That is the question. What's the question? To exist or not to exist? Notice the second part implies there's a choice to be made. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing in them. Notice how that line 2, whether 'tis nobler, doesn't end or doesn't pause until you get to fortune when there's a comma. Right? Even though the end of the verse is at to suffer, you're supposed to read that all in. You're supposed to read or say aloud all of that in one breath. You're not supposed to pause after to suffer. Okay? Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing in them. Why is it a question? Because it begins with whether. Which of two things do you do? Do you suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? Or do you take up arms and by opposing those troubles, end them? How do you do that? Suicide, death. Okay? But notice the next passage, the next part, builds off of the idea of death, ending those troubles. To die, to sleep, no more. What's the no more? It's not no more sleep. It's nothing more. To die, to sleep, turn out the lights. That's it. He's not using sleep as the image of just sleep. He's using sleep as the metaphor for death. You know, what does this stand for? Requiescat in pacem. Rest in peace. Rest implies what? If you're resting, you're going to get up. Okay? To die, to sleep, no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. Consummation, a completion. That's what consummation means. Okay? The consummation of a marriage is the completion of the marriage. The first part of the marriage is the wedding ceremony and vows. The consummation is having sex that night. That's why in the Catholic Church, if the marriage is never consummated, the people are never married. They could be married for 50 years. If they've never slept together, you can get an annulment. No questions asked. Why? Because you were never considered to be married. Okay? Henry VIII got an annulment from his first wife, I believe, who had been his brother's wife. Okay? He was able to get an annulment because she didn't produce any children. And he said, it's because we never had sex. We never consummated the marriage. How are you going to prove it? She had already been married to the brother. If she had been a virgin, it was lost then. Wasn't me, kind of a thing. So he gets a divorce from her. Gets the marriage annulled. Pretty sure it was the first one. So he says, by sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. So if you are in the body is going to inherit, that's what heir to, what? Heartache? More than likely, if you're like the vast majority of people, if you're living and breathing, what is going to happen at some point in your life? You're going to fall in love. And what's going to happen? At some point, once in your life, you're going to fall out of love, or the other person is going to ditch you. That's the heartache. Okay? And The 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. That's just the beating that your body takes in life. The little aches and pains that come with just walking, living, etc. Okay? 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. What's the consummation? Death. The sleeping with death. Because what does it end? Think the end of Oedipus the King. Anybody remember what the chorus says? The translation in here doesn't say it this way, but it means the same thing. Count no man happy, what? Until he is dead. Okay? That's kind of what Hamlet is getting at. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Where have we heard, sorry, allergies are going crazy today. Where have we heard Hamlet talk about sleep? When he tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that in response to the comment about ambition, I could be king bounded in an infinity of space, surrounded by a nutshell, were it not that I have dreams. And Rosencrantz or Guildenstern, one of the two, says those dreams are the substance of your ambition. And he goes on and talks about dreams, shadows, etc. Okay? So, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream, there's the rub. What's meant by rub? What do you do when you rub two things together? What do you create? Friction. That's the conflict. That's the problem. In other words, he's saying that's where the rubber meets the road in this philosophical question. How so? For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, there's that title of that movie that I referred to. When we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. Now, what does he mean, what dreams must come? If sleep is a metaphor for death, right, then if you take the metaphor to its logical conclusion, what is he saying will happen in death? We'll dream. What kind of dreams will we have? That's what kind of Hamlet is getting at. In that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, the flesh, okay, must give us pause. That is, this is the doorway to death. There is no window looking into it. But once we go through, or before we go through, what should we stop and consider? Not only what's out there, but what dreams will we have? And what he's getting at by that is, what's going to happen? See, we know what's going to happen when we go to sleep, generally, right? I mean, we have about a 99.999% confidence. We're going to wake up. But with death, let's assume again, take the metaphor, if we wake up into death, what dreams are going to come then? What realities is one going to experience or see then? There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. Look at your gloss for respect, 68. There's the consideration, all right, that makes calamity of so long life. It's the thinking, what does the door of death open to that makes one wish for what? A long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time? Now that, on a literal level, that means time wears us down. It's one of Shakespeare's favorite themes, more so in the sonnets than in the plays. I mean, he just beats that horse dead in the sonnets. So, who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, that is, the wrong done to us by oppressive powers, whether the powers are the government or landlord or whatever. Anybody in a position of authority or power over us is all that means, okay? Who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, that is, the proud man's arrogant looking down his nose at me, the pangs of despised love. See, and every time I read that, I kind of imagine Hamlet, when he says that, kind of glances up at Ophelia. Because what have we already been told? She's ditched him, right? She's refused all further entreaties, all further conversation, etc. with him. So the pangs of despised love, the law's delay. That's why there's a phrase. Judgment delayed, justice delayed is justice denied. So prior to Magna Carta in 1215, you could get locked up in jail and just left to rot forever. After Magna Carta got signed, you had to be charged and you had to be tried within a certain amount of time. Okay? So, pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, that is, office holders, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes. So, who would suffer and endure all of these things? When he himself might his quietus, his death, make with a bare bodkin, a little dagger. This would be big enough. Because if it were a blade, you could do what with just this? You could easily slice your carotid, you could stab your heart, etc. When he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. Who would fardels is a word completely dropped out of the language by now. It means burdens, troubles, problems. Who would burdens, troubles, problems bear? To grunt and sweat under a weary life. That's all life is. But who would do this? If all you thought of life was that it was weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable, seemed to me all the uses of this world. If that's your experience of life, here, Hamlet says, who would bear all that? But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Who would live such a horrid, wretched life? Unless, or except for, we don't know what's beyond the door. How do you know that what's through the door is better than what you have here? That's his question. The dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. Now what does that imply? People don't return to life from death. Who did he speak to in Act 2?
Dad.
Who is
A ghost.
dead? Or was it his dad? Because remember, he says at the end of Act 2, he's going to do the play. Why? Because this may not have been my father's ghost, he says. This might be a devil, demon, designing to trick me and drag me down to hell. So he's going to get some kind of proof. He's going to see how Claudius responds to the play within the play. Okay? And notice when he says, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, that is all in a positive phrase for death. Everything from the undiscovered to returns. It's just paraphrasing death there. Okay? The dread of what comes after does what? It puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. If it puzzles the will, what does that mean it does? What does it mean to puzzle? The verb, not the noun, to put a puzzle together.
Confused.
Confuse. It confuses the will. Because what is the purpose of the will? The volition aspect of one's character. It's to make you go out and do something. It's the thing inside that says, I need to get up. I need to go to work. I need to go to class. I need to achieve something. And it's the desire to then go and actually do that. He's saying it's the dread of what comes after death that does what to the will? Confuses it. Makes it go, not so sure. Because what if what's beyond the door is worse than what's here? It makes us rather bear those ills we have, life here, than fly to others that we know not of. Why do we know not what those ills possibly are in death? It's one of the issues Hamlet, both the act, character and the play, are bringing up. Is this question: how do we know? How do you know what you know? Empirical, what's called, this is a branch of philosophy called epistemology, it's an E, okay? Deals with how do we know what we know, okay? Death is something what?
Unavoidable.
Avoidable, unavoidable. What else? Knowable? I mean, it's knowable in the sense that I could pull out a gun and boom, and we would all, no offense, watch her die, okay? But we wouldn't experience that death unless one of you turned the gun around on me, and I experienced it then. But then none of you would experience it. In other words, it's something that has to be experienced to be understood. That's empirical. Empirical is just by the senses, okay? But we can't experience that because we can't take a taster. It's not like, going to a winery where you can taste different vintages. You can't take a few steps out, look around, come back in, right? So he says, go back. How do we know what we know of what, so to speak, lies beyond? That becomes a religious or spiritual issue, right? Why does the misfit kill everybody he meets? Because he wasn't there when Jesus did the things he said he did. And if he had been there, he would, he says, know. Instead, he has to what? Believe. He has to just believe. It's like the example of Thomas, called the doubter in the Gospels. Thomas isn't there for the resurrection. When Jesus first appears to all of the disciples, Thomas isn't there that day. Thomas shows up the next day, the disciples tell him, we've seen the Lord. Thomas says, unless I put my finger in his hand and my hand in his side, I will not believe. A week later, they're all enclosed in the upper room again, doors locked. Thomas gets a tap on his shoulder, turns around, and Jesus does this. Says, it's me, Thomas. Put your finger in. Put your hand in. I'm real. And Thomas replies, my Lord, my God. Anybody know how Jesus replies to that? Blessed are you for believing, for seeing and believing, but more blessed are those who don't see and believe. Because that is the definition of faith. Not seeing with our own eyes, and yet still believing. Hamlet's kind of wrestling with that. Okay? Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. And you've got a little gloss there for conscience. I don't know what it says. Probably inhibition by the faculty of reason restraining the will from doing wrong. Yeah, that's probably good. Conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er. Okay? This is a ridiculous gloss. Native hue, natural color. Metaphor derived from the color of the face. I just said that's a ridiculous footnote. Why? The thing that shouldn't be footnoted, thing that shouldn't be explained is just the phrase native hue. It's the native hue of resolution. What does that mean? Resolution. You know, New Year's resolution. What do most people say they're going to do? Change. They're going to eat better, lose weight, get healthy, blah, 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 blah. Stop smoking, stop whatever, okay? 98% of people, do it for a week and then stop. It's when gyms and exercise places make their most money of the year. People sign up for yearly memberships and they don't come, okay? What else?
Like in literature, like the resolution.
Okay, the resolution, the end of the winding down of a play and such. But here it's the native hue of resolution. Have any of you ever had to push a car before? Your car stopped in the middle of the road, you had to get out by yourself and push it over. What happens to your face?
Gets red.
Why?
Because you're working.
You're working. You're expending energy. You are resolved to do that. That's the native hue of resolution. It's when you set your mind to something and you kind of, plant your feet and get all tense. Well, when you do that, when your body does that, your face turns red. That's what he's talking about. How do I know? Because, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought. Your gloss, given a sickly tinge. Again, it's an asinine gloss because it doesn't tell us what the tinge is. It's pale cast of thought. That native hue of resolution, that reddened face, like you're getting ready to fight, what happens? It loses its color. Why? Because the mind kicks into gear and says, this is really stupid. Should you do this? Should you fight? Should you go after this? And as the mind kicks into gear, you start to do what? Second guess. Do I really love her? Do I want to go through with this marriage? Do I want to buy this car? Buy this house? It's got to be something major. It's not, gee, do I wear black shoes or brown shoes today? There's going to be no native hue of resolution there. So it gets sicklied over, like you look deathly because of the pale cast of thought. In enterprises of great pitch and moment, that's why I said it's got to be a big, major decision, like buying a house, buying a new car, getting married, taking on a new job in a foreign place, city, or town where you don't know anybody. Okay? Enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard. What regard? Thinking about the what ifs. What if I'm wrong? What if he, she doesn't really love me? What if the car's a piece of crap? What if the house has problems? All those what ifs are what? Those are the dreams that may come. Those are the things I don't have the answers to. Okay? Behind door number one. So, with this regard, this thinking about possibilities, their currents turn awry. The current that is carrying you towards your goal does what? It turns. So that you miss the goal, you miss the target, and lose the name of action. Now, one of Hamlet's previous, relatively long soliloquies came after talking with and hearing the first actor recite some lines from a play. And Hamlet, in that soliloquy, in Act 2, castigated himself for what?
Not like acting and killing bodies.
Here's this guy who's weeping over Hecuba. And what is Hecuba to him? Nothing. Meanwhile, I have a dead father to avenge. And I can't do anything. Okay? Soft you now, the fair Ophelia. So, is that Hamlet for the first time recognizing Ophelia on the stage? Or is that just Hamlet? It's a big or is that just Hamlet letting us know that he knows Ophelia is on the stage? Because keep in mind, she's there the whole time he delivers this speech. She might be all the way over here. Keep in mind, this is like 25 feet by 42 feet. And he might be all the way over here. But if we can hear it out here, she can hear it there. Everything he's just said. So, antic disposition. Is this entire speech an act by Hamlet? The reason I ask that is because, again, according to kind of the strict definition, a soliloquy tells us what the character is actually thinking, feeling inside, not lying to himself, herself, or anybody else. Okay? So, soft you now, the fair Ophelia, in thy orisons, in your prayers, be all my sins remembered. Is he asking her, so Ophelia, when you pray to God, say, and God, remember Hamlet because he's a liar, and remember Hamlet because he's a cheat, and remember Hamlet's infidelity, and remember him. Is that what he's saying? Or does he mean, forgive me in your prayers. Forgive all my sins. And that's what he means by remember them. Because remember them would kind of also imply, and God forgive Hamlet for. The reason I bring that up is because we're going to see in Act 5, two people are going to forgive each other for wrongs they've done to each other. All right? And it's really important because of the theological implications within the play. whether one is Catholic, Protestant, etc. So, she says, good, my lord, how does your honor for many a day? Now remember, why is she there?
To see if she's the reason he's acting crazy.
And because she's been set loose by her father on Hamlet. She knows she is part of the spying game. Okay? I thank you. Well. That is, I'm doing fine. I have remembrances of yours that I've longed to redeliver. And so she pulls out like a little satchel, a packet of papers, and probably some crushed flowers in there. Hamlet, I never gave you aught. My honored lord, you know right what you did. And with them, man, words of sweet breath composed has made the things more rich. So, the things are the cards, the written letters, the poems, and such. But she says, what makes them more rich? It's words of so sweet breath composed. She believed every last word that was in these letters. Their perfume lost. They no longer have that sweet breath smell, so to speak. Take these again. In other words, they don't mean anything to me now. For to the noble mind, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. What has she just accused Hamlet of? Being unkind. What's meant by unkind, though? Lied to her. Unnatural. What is she implying? She's going back to what Polonius said and Laertes said about these tokens of love. They were pimps. They were brokers. They were just designed to do one thing, to get her into bed. Hamlet, are you honest, my lord? She's like, what? Are you fair? So, are you honest? Are you fair means, are you beautiful? What means, your lordship? If you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty. Look at your gloss. Okay? Your honest black beauty. Honest meaning truthful and chaste, and fair meaning just, honorable, and beautiful are not mere quibbles. The speech has the irony of a double entendre. So, are you, lost my place. Are you honest and are you fair? Are you honest? Are you truthful? Are you chaste? Okay. She's like, what do you mean? Are you fair? Are you, again, look at the thing. Fair meaning just and honorable as well as beautiful. If you be honest and fair, if you are honorable, truthful, chaste, and fair, honorable, just, and beautiful, he says, your honesty, and you got another one down there, your chastity, what? Should admit no discourse to or with your beauty. Your chastity should not admit conversation with your beauty. What's his point? If you are these things, if you are honorable and if you are fair, okay, or if you're honest and you are fair, then those two things should not be used to allow someone to get to or use your honesty, your chastity, your virginity. He's saying if you are honest and fair, if you are chaste and beautiful and such, you should stay away from him. How do we know that's what he means? She says, we don't have time, so we will pick up with, wherever it is, could beauty, my lord, line 109. Don't forget,